Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So the topic of today's video I have touched on in various videos, but I wanted to do an entire video on tips and tricks to reuse your flowers from your ceremony to your reception. Wedding flowers are one of those things that can add up so quickly and something that a lot of my couples tend to get a little bit of sticker shock from. So if florals are important to you, but you are looking for ways to save money on them, the easiest way that you can do that is to have floral arrangements that are able to be repurposed. So what I mean by that is having specifically for your wedding ceremony, having flowers and arrangements that you can move from your ceremony location into someplace in your reception space so that you can kind of double dip there and not have to have so many varying types of arrangements or spend a lot of money on a floral arch or wedding ceremony flowers that are only going to be utilized for like 20-30 minutes. So let's start with kind of overall tips when it comes to repurposing your flowers in general. Number one is to be aware of your venue, your space, and kind of overall convenience in order to achieve this. So if your wedding venue, if your ceremony and reception spaces are in the same location, that is obviously ideal. Being able to repurpose florals is going to become increasingly difficult if you are in separate locations for your ceremony and then traveling to your reception space. So if you're getting married at the same place you're having your reception, this is ideal and super easy to be able to repurpose your flowers. You want to keep in mind what the distance is from your ceremony location to your reception location and what that kind of path will look like when it comes to repurposing your flowers. So if they're going to be large, bulky arrangements that need to be transported from the ceremony site to a reception space that is kind of far away, you might want to be thinking through options on how to transport those items. So is there like a golf cart on site? Is there a wagon? Is there something that you can use to easily transport those items over to your reception space to make that a little bit easier for you? Number two is you want to repurpose flowers that have a water source. So this is the best way to ensure that whatever floral arrangements you are repurposing from one site to another are going to stay beautiful and stay fresh and be something that you want to display for the remainder of your day or your evening. So the best way to achieve this is to have a water source. So as many arrangements as you can at your ceremony, have in a vase, have in some type of water source. So if you're having a arch that's actually installed onto or floral installation installed onto your arch, there likely will not be any water sources on that kind of an installation. So chat through that with your florist, think through that, and come up with an option that will provide some type of water source for your flowers for anything that you are wanting to repurpose. Similarly, be aware of what more sensitive flower types are. Again, this is something that you will chat through with a florist and they will be able to provide more insight on this and kind of guide you in a direction that's going to set you up for success. But just so that you're aware, there are some flowers and particular blooms that are a little bit more sensitive to particularly the sun and the heat that will not be able to be repurposed as easily. So hydrangeas and lilacs are two of the most sensitive flowers when it comes to being exposed to the elements. So if you have a lot of arrangements that are going to be including these flowers at your ceremony site, must have a water source for these, number one. And number two, even with a water source, if they are in the heat, if they're in the sun, they're going to wilt very easily. So try and avoid these types of flowers if you are wanting to repurpose ceremony flowers into reception space. Number four, make sure you have somebody that is going to transport these flowers for you. Obviously, this is not going to be you. You are going to be busy, you're going to be taking pictures, you're going to be greeting and mingling with your guests. Make sure that you have somebody that will be moving these flowers for you. This is where having a wedding planner or wedding coordinator will come in handy, of course. So if you do have one of those, they will likely take care of this for you and make sure that you're just giving them a heads up that you are planning to repurpose a lot of your ceremony flowers into some space in your reception space. If you do not have either of these, you're going to need to ask a friend, a family member, somebody to move your ceremony flowers to where they're going to go in their new home for your reception. And make sure that you are giving detailed instructions on this, maybe walk through beforehand with whoever this individual is going to be so that they know what is needed to be able to repurpose the flowers that you want. Okay, now let's talk about some specific ideas when it comes to repurposing flowers. So typically, repurposing florals is going to be anything in your ceremony site and moving them into your reception space. Most common, this is some type of arch or arbor installation or floral display, and being able to repurpose that, as this typically is going to cost the most amount of money when it comes to your ceremony flowers. My biggest tip for repurposing any flowers on an arch or at an arch or wherever you are getting married at the altar is the easiest way is to have your own self-sustaining vases and have them kind of at the base of the arch rather than physically put onto the arch. Anything that is installed on the arch, like I mentioned before, will likely not have a water source, and it's also going to be a lot more difficult to remove and transport and make it still look pretty. So the easiest way to ensure that you will have good looking fresh flowers is to do like round vases at your arbor or at your altar. Maybe you don't even have an arch, and have them, you can make them really tall, but have them in their kind of standalone vases, and you can just pick these vases up and move them to their new location. There are ways that you can have an actual fixed installation onto the arch and be able to remove it and take it down, but a florist will likely construct this in a different way than they would if it was going to just stay on the arch, so make sure you're communicating that you want it to be movable. Additionally, aisle flowers can be repurposed. As kind of a general overall statement, I would not recommend repurposing any of your ceremony flowers into centerpieces. Centerpieces on your guest tables are something that is going to be very often seen and photographed, and you can't really guarantee what the condition of your flowers at your ceremony are going to be for your reception space. Obviously, you are hoping for the best and wanting them to be as fresh and beautiful as possible, but you have bugs to think about, you have sun, weather, wind. Wind can really mess up floral arrangements, so I wouldn't put the pressure of a centerpiece on being a repurposed item. If you're getting married indoors, your ceremony is indoors, and you're repurposing them into an indoor reception space, then you can get away with this a little bit better. But if you're having an outdoor ceremony, I would highly recommend repurposing any ceremony flowers into accent pieces and additional flowers in your reception space rather than serving the sole purpose of a centerpiece. So aisle markers or aisle florals of any kind can easily be repurposed. Again, if you are having some sort of self-sustaining vase, or even if they're in boxes, I've done that before where they'll have them in kind of like a planter box that will run the aisle along the aisle, and we can easily pick those up and repurpose them. A lot of times couples will choose to put this either on the head table or right in front of the head table, depending on the height of these arrangements. You obviously aren't wanting to put any big florals that are going to be taller than about a foot high, as that's going to start blocking your guest view of your face and everything on a head table. Anything tall you want to put in front of the head table or in front of a dessert table, or you can also bring flowers and put them in front of your DJ or in front of your bar or on your bar counter. Those are all great places to be able to bring in ceremony flowers and repurpose them into your reception space. Another way you can repurpose is if your arch is movable, and if it's convenient to be able to move the entire arch structure with flowers on it into some space in your reception. So I've seen couples be able to move their entire arch that they got married at and be able to put it as either behind the head table or sweetheart table, if that's an option, or have it set up against a wall and make that kind of a photo backdrop option, so that you're able to reuse that arch and that decoration throughout the remainder of your wedding day. Another way to repurpose flowers is to be able to repurpose your bridesmaids bouquets. So scattering empty vases that have water in them during your cocktail hour onto the tables, or making sure that you have vases ready to go for that when your bridal party comes into the reception space. Those bridesmaids can plop their bridesmaid bouquets into those empty vases, and those can serve as additional floral arrangements. So maybe this is across your head table, or again, filling in some detail spots like on your dessert table or at your bar, or whatever that might be, filling in those extra spaces and having extra floral arrangements created from your bridesmaid bouquets. Similarly, choose a bridesmaid bouquet to use as a toss bouquet if you're planning on doing a bouquet toss at your wedding, rather than having a florist create a toss bouquet, or so that you don't have to get rid of your bridal bouquet if that's something that you're wanting to keep. Another note on ceremony florals or an arch piece, if you have a garland or kind of a swag that's going to be on a ceremony arch, that is typically a little bit easier to repurpose than like a corner piece or some kind of install that is zip tied and using like a foam box or something onto the actual arch. Just want to make sure that again you're using a hardier bloom, something that's going to outlast the elements during your wedding ceremony. But if it's all in one piece, like an actual fixed garland, that could potentially be easier to repurpose and be able to use as a swag or a garland on a sweetheart table or on your dessert table or somewhere like that. You can also talk to a florist about having individual water tubes. They do have little water tubes that you can put in individual like flower stem into. They're about yay big, pretty small. Can't always be hidden by the garland, so keep that in mind. If you're able to have a water tube on the garland, that's another way that you can try and preserve those flower stems during your wedding ceremony and keep them fresh if you're using a garland into your wedding reception. There are a lot of ways you can repurpose your wedding flowers to save you a little bit of money and also be a little bit less wasteful when it comes to florals at your wedding if you're able to repurpose them from your wedding ceremony into your wedding reception. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.